hobbies, it's Xisha here from ThirdEyeNuke Studio, and in this video tutorial I'm going to show you step by step how to paint a Herald of Nurgle. It's going to be a realistic color scheme. We're going to do a bit of weathering on him, and this will enhance his decaying look. So let's get started. The model has been covered with Chaos Black spray followed by Vallejo surface primer. Apply a base coat of olive drab over the model to cover it completely. Dilute plague brown with a little bit of distilled water to make it thinner in consistency, and airbrush it over the model at a zenithal highlight at a 45-degree angle. Make sure not to turn the model around and airbrush underneath, just keep the model in place and rotate it around your airbrush, which is tilted at an angle. To check that the highlight is working correctly, you can tilt the model and see that underneath it's still dark, and if you tilt it back straight, that the highlight is really light on all the surfaces of the model. With Dead Flesh, we're going to do another highlight, but this time tilt your airbrush directly above the model and spray it downwards. This way you get an illusion that light is falling on a model, and just again tilt the model slightly and you will see how the effect is working. We're going to apply oil paint over the model, and in order to make sure that you protect the work that you've done so far on the model and to create a layer between the work you've done and the oil you're going to apply, airbrush the model completely with gloss varnish. It's very important that the varnish is completely dry before you start applying your oil color. For the oil, in a small pot, mix burnt umber with white spirits to very thin consistency, so you want a lot of white spirits and a little bit of the paint. Get a medium-sized brush and apply gently over the model. Cover the whole model, so it's all, all the areas, all the creases, everything's covered. And let it dry for about 2-3 minutes. Get a new fresh pot and pour some clean white spirit. Get a little sponge and dip it into the white spirit, wring it out so it's damp but not wet, and using that sponge, rub off a layer of the burnt umber that you've applied on the model. Don't take off all the paint that you've applied, but just kind of take out a layer and leave more in all the creases, and take off more on all the smooth areas of the model. Make sure the oil paint is completely dry before proceeding to the next stage. You can leave it for an hour or so to dry, or use a hairdryer and hairdry for about 10-15 minutes. To fix the result, airbrush a layer of matte varnish over the model. Airbrush lightly a highlight of Dead Flesh again on top of the model. Do it really lightly, don't do a heavy hand on it. Using a medium or a large dry brush, dry brush P3 Thrall Flesh over the model. As an alternative paint choice, you can use Nurgling green. Mix P3 Thrall Flesh and Citadel White Scar to make a paler color, and dry brush lightly over the model again. Now we're going to paint the fleshy areas of the model. Those are wounds and different boils, and as you can see it's got loads of cuts and exposed underneath flesh, and also we're going to go inside of the mouth. For our initial layer we're going to use Vallejo flat tan. Before doing such detailed work, it's always good to check your control over your airbrush and to actually spray on a tissue, on a piece of paper, just to see how thin you can get with your airbrush, that it's not clogged up, and to get used to how to press on the airbrush, to make sure not to overspray when you are going into the detailed areas. When you're painting the wounds, don't be overly fussy about the edges. It can go slightly away from the circle you paint, the wound you're painting. For the highlight in the wounds, we're going to use Vallejo skin tone. Just make sure not to overspray the layer of tan that you already put. Just spray in the middle of the wounds and leave the previous color around on the edges. The Herald has a mechanical arm, so in fact this is a piece of his body that's going to be metal in color, and as a first step to achieve that is to spray it black. To make sure you're not going to overspray the model with black, make sure to tape or to use blue tack and just cover the areas you don't want to be black when applying the main coat. When you applied most of the black and you take all the masking off, make sure that just to check that there are some areas that you might have masked and the black didn't get in. So do little sprays here and there just to make sure you cover the whole arm. The way I choose to spray the horn is not to spray it completely, but 2/3 of it from top, just to give it a saturation that is really pitch black at the top and it's saturating into a lighter tone towards the bottom. Dry brush Citadel lead belcher on the mechanical arm and the barrel at the back of the model. Make sure you apply it with quite a confident stroke so you get a nice silver color throughout the black areas. And now dry brush Vallejo oily steel over the same area. Apply a little bit less. It's just to get a bit more shine. Before finishing the arm, I want to get on painting the base just because one of the dry brushing is going to be something we're going to do on the base and on the arm, so we can do it in one go later on. The first thing you're going to do is airbrush the whole base with light grey. Airbrush dark earth sort of around the base, on the edges of the base, underneath the rocks, wherever you think it kind of gets a bit darker on the base, just to make it more moody and textured. Mix Citadel White Scar and Citadel Administratum Grey to 1:1 consistency, so it's a very light grey. This grey should be lighter than the original grey color on the base. And using your large brush, dry brush it all over the base. And now with Vallejo Chrome, you can dry brush the arm to get even a lighter silver highlight. Dry brush also over the whole model lightly, just so you get sparkle here and there. It looks quite nice. Finally, dry brush over the base to get the highlight on all the rocks. It looks really nice. Now we're going to emphasize the shadows on the model. So we're going to go inside all the creases of the skin, behind the arm, whatever you think there can be shadow on the model. For this we're going to use initially yellow olive. Apply it lightly, as you feel it looks right, all the areas that you think should be shaded. For the next step, mix yellow olive with black so it becomes really dark green color, and apply it in the same areas. Don't overspray the work you've already done, but sort of leave the lighter tone on the edges, sort of saturates into the skin, and sort of a deeper, darker green in the deeper areas of the shade. We're halfway through, so here is how the model is looking so far. Now we're going to apply white on the model. We're going to paint the hood white, so all the fabric at the front and at the back. We're also going to paint the little Nurglings in his arms white. Also the plates of his mechanical arm, the one on his forearm and on his hand. It's quite useful to cover the areas around the hood before painting it with masking tape or blue tack, just to make sure you're not going to overspray the model's skin white, because it will be harder to fix that. And when you apply it sort of from the top, so just to kind of make sure the folds are not oversprayed white, and sort of lighter at the top of the hood and sort of like mistier on the edges of the hood. And again, the same as with the black, when you take off the masking tape and the blue tack, make sure to check that all the areas underneath the tape and blue tack are sprayed where they have to be white, that they're actually sprayed white. When you apply the white on the Nurglings, don't apply it heavily, dust them at a 45-degree angle or from the top. Just make sure they've got some really heavy shadows going on there, because you don't want them to lose their detail. Mist the plates on the arm very, very, very lightly, so it's just little dust, just to make them stand out from the rest of the arm. I think it looks really cool. This is how the model turned out after all the white has been applied. I'm going to weather the hood with some pigments. I'm going to use MIG pigments and also a brown chalk, like an artist chalk you can get from an art store. First, use the brown chalk dust and apply it around the hood in the areas of shade, just to get it moody. Don't be too worried if you apply it in the wrong place, because we are going to take some of it off later. And next, use light rust to bring some brighter tones into the hood, just to brighten it up. And finally, use the black pigment or black pigment mixed with the brown, just to get really deep dark areas, and apply maybe a few layers to get a bit more depth to the shadowing. Spend some time working in it until you're satisfied with the way it looks. Now we're going to take some of the pigment off. For this, we're going to use a planed earbud. Dip it in some water, dry it on a bit of tissue, and literally just go over the model with it and pick out any pigments on all the reliefs of the folds of the hood, or anywhere where you think there should be a lighter highlight on the hood, and continue doing it, and also going back to the chalks and apply maybe more of the chalk or of the pigments, and basically just until you think it's really weathered, it looks really natural, really, really realistic. And when you're done, fix the hood with some matte varnish. Since we have done the plates on the arm white, dry brush them a little with some chrome to give them more shine. Now we're going to do some washes on this model. First of all, it's Reikland Fleshshade, and it's a quite dull red wash that's going to work really nice in the model wounds. Apply generous amounts in all the wounds. Don't be too stingy and apply very, very little, because when it dries, what it does, it actually tends to dull down. So apply very generously, so it's, oozing with the red. So when it dries, you're gonna get really bright, vibrant color. Using Druchii Violet and Drakenhof Nightshade, do some washes all over the model, like in creases or here and there, just to make it look like bruises or skin colorations. Also, do the washes on the maggots. You can use them separately or you can mix them together. Also apply those washes onto the Nurglings in all the creases. You can put a lot of wash if you want them bright, or you can put a little bit, which is more or less what I'm doing, just to give a highlight, like a tint of blue and purple, but not to make them actually blue and purple. Apply a little bit of the Nightshade highlight on the plates of his arm, just to give it a nice blue tint. Mix Vallejo Model Air White and a tiny bit of Khemri Brown to get a very light beige color. get it as white or as yellowy as you prefer, and you can use this color with your small brush to paint the teeth of the model. Mix Citadel Evil Snaz Scarlet with Vallejo Smoke. So you get like quite a dark red. Also, mix it with some water. Make it really thin, so it's like flowy, like a wash. Apply it again on all the wounds, but apply it sort of like as if where the concentration of blood would be, towards the bottom of the wound. Maybe even do a drag line, like as if the blood is dripping out of the wound. Also apply it in the mouth, over the teeth, to sort of dull them down a little. Mix Citadel Rhinox Hide and Abaddon Black to 1:1 ratio, so you get quite dark brown. Using a small sponge, dip it into the paint and do some sponging all over the arm of the model, so it looks slightly chipped. You also can use the sponging around the hood, on the edges of the hood, to sort of make it look like worn and torn. But it's quite tricky, so I would be very careful, because you don't want to accidentally apply too much paint on the hood. In a small pot, mix the oil color burnt umber with white spirits to a medium thin consistency, so it's not as flowing thin as our initial oil layer that we did over the model. It's kind of like more like a wash. Apply the oil wash over the mechanical parts of the model, where you feel like the oily parts could be of all the screws, you know, underneath all the plates, and you know, wherever you think it looks cool. Then you can apply it in other parts of the model. Apply it to the Nurglings. Don't cover your previous washes, just enhance them. Apply it in all the dark areas of the skin, all the shaded areas, all the skin creases, around the tail, at the back. With a tiny brush, paint the eyes of little Nurglings black, and also gloss them. And also apply gloss on the horn of the model. I think it looks nice not to cover the whole horn with gloss, but just to sort of go 2/3 down, a little bit higher than where the black stops, sort of do it in strokes. Mix Timea Clear Red with a drop of Black Indian ink, so you get sort of a darkish red. With a small brush, apply it in some areas of the wounds. Because it's a Timea paint, it's actually going to stay glossy, so don't put too much on the model, but just do it here and there. Do a little bit coming from his mouth, wherever you think it looks nice. We're almost there. We just need to finish the base, really. With a black brown, or also known as grey brown, airbrush around the base, here and there. Don't cover your previous work, just enhance underneath the stone, around the edges. Dilute black brown with black and apply it in the same areas as in the previous stage, but just less, and sort of selectively here and there, really just as final touches. Paint the rim of your base with Citadel black. And so this is our Herald of Nurgle finished. So we're all done now, and hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial. Let me know how you got on, and if you have any questions about any stages of the tutorial. And see you guys next time!